When night falls, the darkness starts to speak. Between each breath and the silence there are whispers no one was meant to hear. This is Night Whispers, where the dark has a story to tell. It's strange how quickly a peaceful place can start to feel unsafe. This happened to me just a couple of weeks ago, and even now I'm not sure it's truly over. I don't live deep in the woods, but my house sits right where the suburbs fade into nature, trees, wild grass, and the constant hum of crickets at night. On one side of our property lies a small wooded patch, not quite a forest, but dense enough that you can't see the road beyond it once the sun goes down. As a kid, I'd ride my bike down that road just to catch a glimpse of the water through the trees. It stretched far beyond what I could see, still and silent, reflecting the sky like glass. The tall chain-link fence wrapped around it completely covered with faded "no trespassing" and government property signs that made it feel forbidden, like something you weren't meant to even look at for too long. What made it even stranger was that the reservoir didn't exist on any map. Not Google Maps, not Apple Maps, nothing. You'd think a body of water that big would at least have a name or a marker, but it was just blank space. My siblings and I used to joke that maybe it wasn't water at all, but something the government wanted hidden. Still, curiosity always lingered every time we passed it. Running has always been my escape, and that wooded trail was perfect, a clean 2-mile loop through the trees skirting the quiet road by the water before circling back home. It was peaceful in a way that made you forget time existed. No cars, no barking dogs, no distractions, just the sound of my breathing and the rhythm of my shoes hitting the dirt. It felt safe. Or at least it used to. That afternoon had felt normal enough, just another training run before the season kicked in. The air was thick and still the kind that makes every sound sharper. When I heard the faint rustling behind me, I slowed down, glanced over my shoulder, and saw nothing but trees swaying. I laughed it off, assuming it was a squirrel or raccoon. That night, though, I'd learn it wasn't. The storm rolled in like a living thing, lightning flashing through the trees, thunder shaking the windows. I remember smiling, letting the rain's rhythm pull me toward sleep. It was peaceful, almost hypnotic. But then beneath the thunder's rumble, I caught something else soft, uneven, and too human. It wasn't the wind, and it definitely wasn't the rain. At first I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, maybe the rain echoing strangely. But the sound grew clearer, fragile, and wet, like someone quietly weeping in pain. My chest tightened as I realized it was coming from directly below my window. Then, through the rain and thunder, I heard it, a woman's voice, trembling and desperate. "Can you help me? I'm cold." My heart was pounding so hard it drowned out the storm. I didn't even stop to think, I just acted. My feet hit the floor before my brain caught up. I flung the door open, the wind nearly tearing it from my hands, and sprinted into the downpour. The cold rain stung my face, soaking my clothes instantly, but adrenaline pushed me forward. I just knew someone needed help. Someone was out there alone in the storm. For a split second, relief washed over me. There was someone there, not just my imagination. But that relief turned to confusion and unease almost instantly. The woman was drenched, her long hair clinging to her pale skin, her white gown glowing faintly in the stormlight. She didn't look up, just crouched there, trembling, whispering something I couldn't make out. The rain poured around us, yet she didn't seem to care, or even notice it. For a heartbeat, her eyes locked onto mine, wide, glassy, almost glowing in the rain. Then she let out a sound halfway between a gasp and a growl. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was frozen. The way she moved didn't seem human, too fast, too fluid. But just as she was about to reach me, she stopped abruptly, tilting her head slightly, studying me like an animal deciding what to do next. My dad came stumbling out of his room, confused and half asleep as I tried to explain what had just happened. My words tumbled out between shaky breaths, the woman, the rain, how she ran into the woods barefoot. He stared at me for a second, then grabbed a flashlight and went to check the backyard, but of course she was gone. The storm howled louder outside, making the house feel smaller, tighter, almost suffocating. My dad decided we'd deal with it in the morning. Still, neither of us could shake the image of that drenched woman standing under my window. He poured us both some coffee, even though it was past midnight, and we sat in silence, listening to the storm batter the house. Every creak, every gust of wind made me flinch, half expecting to see her face pressed against the glass again. Sleep that night felt impossible. A few peaceful nights passed, and I almost convinced myself it had just been a bizarre misunderstanding. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't gone. Every time I looked out my window toward the woods, I half expected to see her standing there. Then, about a week later, something happened during one of my morning runs that made my blood run cold. Through the curtain of morning mist, I could barely make out the shape at first, a figure sitting right by the edge of the water, feet dangling in. My heart skipped. No one was supposed to be there. The place was fenced off for miles. I wiped the sweat from my eyes, hoping I was imagining things, but the figure stayed perfectly still. Maybe it was the crunch of gravel under my shoes, or maybe I gasped, but she suddenly turned her head toward me. Even from that distance, I could feel her eyes lock onto mine. My whole body went numb. The air felt heavier, like the world itself was holding its breath. She shouldn't have been able to hear me, yet she moved as if she had been waiting. My pulse spiked as she sprinted straight at the fence, her bare feet slapping against the wet ground. I wanted to move, but my legs felt cemented in place. When she reached the chain link, she didn't stop. She pressed her face right up against it, eyes wide, lips curling into a smile that didn't look human. Rainwater dripped from her hair as she stared unblinking. The splash echoed across the still air, swallowed quickly by the wind. For a few seconds, I just stood there, stunned, watching ripples spread where she'd vanished. No head resurfaced, no bubbles, nothing. My throat tightened as the silence returned heavier than before. It was like she'd never existed at all. The officers swept their flashlights over the dark water, but there was nothing, no ripples, no sign of anyone. One of them muttered that maybe I'd mistaken a reflection or shadow. I wanted to argue, but my voice wouldn't come out. Deep down, I already knew what I'd seen was real. Every night the noises grow bolder, soft footsteps faint scraping against the wall, and sometimes a whisper carried by the wind. I've stopped opening my window, but it doesn't help. The feeling of being watched never fades. I keep telling myself it's just animals, yet deep down, I know she's still out there. We checked every inch of that fence. No holes, no gaps, nothing but rusted metal and barbed wire stretching endlessly. It's like she appeared there out of thin air. My sister tried to laugh it off, saying I just imagined it, but I could see the fear in her eyes too. Neither of us go near that road anymore. Maybe Nick's theories sound crazy, but sometimes late at night when I hear rustling near that window, I start to wonder if he's right. Whatever that reservoir is, or whoever that woman was, I know one thing for sure: she wasn't supposed to be there, and neither was I. That night felt different, colder, heavier somehow. I was tired of the yelling, the same arguments looping endlessly. Grabbing my keys, I walked out without a plan, just the need to be anywhere but home. The rain had started to fall, and for once it felt like the world outside understood exactly how I felt inside. It wasn't exactly cozy, but it was mine, quiet, isolated, and far from the chaos at home. I figured a night there would clear my head. The drive out was long and empty, the kind that makes you feel small. By the time I reached the building, the sky was turning gray and thunder rumbled in the distance. It felt like the world was warning me to turn back. The rain began just as I pulled into the cracked old lot, fat drops splattering against the windshield. The building loomed ahead, silent, gray, and lifeless. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment, listening to the storm gather strength. For the first time that night, I felt truly alone, and somehow that was both comforting and unnerving. Inside, the air was cold and musty, thick with the scent of dust and old concrete. Each gust of wind made the metal roof groan, and the sound of rain hitting it was deafening, like endless handfuls of pebbles crashing above me. I found a single working lamp and turned it on its yellow glow, barely pushing back the shadows that filled every corner. I stretched out on the cot, listening to the steady rhythm of rain on metal. The storm outside felt distant, almost protective, like a barrier between me and everything waiting beyond these walls. For a moment, the loneliness didn't bother me. It felt peaceful, safe, even. I closed my eyes, letting the sound lull me into a fragile calm. The crash echoed through the building, sharp and violent, cutting through the roar of the storm like a scream. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I held my breath, straining to hear past the pounding rain. For a few seconds there was nothing, just the hiss of water and the groan of wind, and somehow that silence felt even worse than the sound itself. I kept the rifle because I didn't trust leaving my safety to chance, and now its weight in my hands felt oddly reassuring. Slowly, I crept down the stairwell, every step measured. At the landing, I stopped, breath shallow, and listened hard for any sound beyond the storm, a scrape, a footfall, a whisper. Nothing answered, just the rain and the roof's steady percussion. The silence felt like a presence itself. My flashlight beam swept across the cracked boards and glittering shards on the floor. The hole was small, like someone had tested the wood rather than tried to break in. I crouched to inspect it, the rain dripping through the opening in thin silver streaks. The air near the window was colder, sharper. For a brief moment I could have sworn I heard breathing, but it vanished as quickly as it came. My nerves refused to settle. Even after searching every corner twice, I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see movement in the shadows. The theory about vandals made sense, but something about it didn't sit right. The hit seemed too deliberate. Still, I forced myself to believe it. After patching the window with the damp cardboard, I climbed back upstairs, trying to shake the feeling of unseen eyes behind me. My pulse quickened instantly. I sat up, straining my ears, barely breathing. The sound was faint, measured steps, deliberate and steady, creeping across the concrete below. For a moment I convinced myself it was just the storm shifting debris, but the rhythm was too human. I reached for the rifle, my fingers trembling as the footsteps paused, then started again, this time closer to the base of the stairs. My breath caught in my throat as I leaned forward, trying to separate the footsteps from the pounding rain. Each step echoed faintly like bare feet on cold concrete. I gripped the rifle tighter, every muscle tensed. The sound stopped, then resumed only a few steps, this time closer. The silence that followed was worse than the noise itself. It felt like whoever, or whatever it was, knew exactly where I was. The rain hit my face like needles as I swept the light around the building. Mud sucked at my shoes and the beam trembled in my shaky hand. Every shadow looked alive, twisting with the wind. I circled the whole property. Nothing. No footprints, no tire tracks, not even a sign of movement. Yet somehow I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone out there. I sat on the edge of the cot, drenched and shivering, trying to convince myself it was all in my head. The storm groaned above me, wind howling through the cracks like voices whispering nonsense. I told myself it was just water, wood, and wind, but deep down I knew that rhythm. Those steps weren't random, they were deliberate, and they had stopped exactly beneath where I slept. The scraping sound echoed through the building, slow and rough, vibrating up through the floorboards beneath me. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just once, it came again, louder, closer. Something was being moved down there. I grabbed the rifle, my hands trembling, and aimed toward the stairwell. The sound stopped suddenly, leaving a silence so heavy it felt alive. My words bounced off the concrete walls, swallowed quickly by the storm's roar. I scanned every corner light flooding the dusty floors, but nothing moved, not even a shadow. The rage that fueled me moments ago started to fade, replaced by something colder. The building felt wrong now, heavier somehow, like it was holding its breath and waiting. The wiring was ancient, half the walls were cracked, and there was even exposed insulation in some rooms. If the cops saw this place, they'd probably condemn it on the spot. So instead, I just stood there, rifle in hand, drenched in sweat, trying to convince myself everything was fine. But the longer I stayed silent, the more I felt that something in the darkness was listening. My skin prickled and the air felt heavier, almost electric. The silence wasn't just quiet anymore, it felt aware, like the building itself was holding its breath. Every instinct in me screamed to get out. I didn't see anything, didn't hear anything new, but I swear, something unseen was standing just beyond the light watching. I sprinted through the hallway, my footsteps echoing louder than the thunder outside. The air smelled of dust and metal, and every flicker of lightning made the shadows dance across the walls. By the time I reached the door, my hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped the keys. I didn't look back, not once. Whatever was in there, I wasn't going to give it another chance. Even now, part of me dreads the idea, but curiosity keeps gnawing at me. I need to know if what I felt was real or just in my head. Maybe a few cameras will finally give me peace of mind. Still, every time I picture that empty building under the storm's glow, I feel that same cold shiver crawl up my spine. Maybe it was just a stranger, maybe something else entirely, but every time I think about that night, the hairs on my neck still rise. The sound of dragging furniture, that sudden wave of terror, it all felt too real. If it was in my head, I'm afraid of what that means. If it wasn't, then I'm even more afraid of what's still out there. It was one of those calm October nights where the air felt cool and the roads were empty. Leo and I just wanted a break from the usual boredom of our small town, so a low-key house party sounded perfect. We laughed the whole drive there, the radio humming softly in the background. Neither of us knew that night would end up being one we'd never forget. To be honest, the vibe was a little too college-like for me, but there's not much else to do out here in the sticks. I was the designated driver, so I'd been sipping the same warm beer for 3 hours while Leo got louder and deep with every drink. By the time we finally left around 1 a.m., he was slurring his words and swaying like the wind could knock him over. It was funny at first until I realized I'd basically become his babysitter. After prying him away from the girl he'd been hitting on, I half-guided, half-shoved him into my car for the 20-minute drive home. By then, the weather had turned ugly. What started as a light drizzle had become a torrential downpour so thick I could barely see 30 feet ahead of the headlights. I had to slow the car to barely 30 on roads I'd normally fly down at 60. Leo wouldn't shut up first, griping about my driving, then the music, and finally how he had to pee right that second. I told him we were 15 minutes from home at most, but he kept whining like a kid on a road trip. His endless complaining was starting to drive me insane. After 5 more minutes of Leo's endless whining, I finally gave up. I pulled over on a lonely stretch of road beside what looked like cornfields, though in the darkness and rain I could barely tell. We were in the middle of nowhere. No houses, no streetlights, just endless farmland. I told him to go ahead and get drenched if he wanted. He didn't wait for me to finish. He was already stumbling out into the rain. He nearly tumbled right out of the passenger seat and staggered toward the field, vanishing into the sheets of rain within seconds. The downpour was so heavy I could barely make out his shape once he was 10 feet away. Just as he disappeared from view, I remembered there was an umbrella in my back seat. I let the engine idle for a minute, then figured I might as well get out and stretch my legs too. I grabbed my umbrella, locked the door out of habit, and walked in the opposite direction from where Leo had wandered off. I stopped about 20 yards from the car, right where the gravel met the tall crop swaying in the wind. The rain was pounding, the storm roaring all around, yet beneath it I could swear I heard something rustling near the car. Something that didn't sound like the rain. Without moving, I glanced back over my shoulder toward the car, but saw nothing through the curtain of rain. The keys were in my pocket, and I was sure I had locked the doors, so I brushed it off. Once I was done, I walked back toward the car, expecting to see Leo waiting, but he wasn't there. Minutes passed, first 2, then 5, then 10, and still no sign of him. I was getting seriously pissed off. What should have been a simple 20-minute drive home had turned into a 45-minute headache, and I had to wake up early the next day. I was about to lay on the horn when movement caught my eye in the side mirror. Leo was sprinting toward the car, splashing through puddles, and even through the rain and darkness, I could tell something was very wrong. The moment Leo jumped into the car before he even managed to slam the door shut, he screamed, "Drive! Go! Go! Go!" Instinct kicked in and I floored it, tires splashing through the flooded road. I couldn't go too fast with the rain blurring everything, but adrenaline had me gripping the wheel tight. Between gasps, Leo stammered that while he was doing his business, he saw someone he thought was me, standing to his right. The figure had wandered deeper into the field, and in his drunken logic, Leo assumed I was trying to mess with him, or maybe that I was secretly more drunk than I'd admitted, so he followed. He said he trailed behind for a while, confused and sluggish, not really thinking straight. Then the figure suddenly turned around, and that's when Leo realized it definitely wasn't me. Leo said he couldn't see the person's face in the dark, but it was definitely not me. His words were tumbling out fast, maybe 30 seconds total, and then the car suddenly jerked to the right. I gripped the wheel just as a harsh thump, thump, thump echoed beneath us, the unmistakable sound of a flat tire. It was pretty much the worst-case scenario. The car was pulling so hard to one side that driving any farther wasn't an option. I cursed under my breath and eased it onto the shoulder. We were maybe half a mile from where we'd first stopped, not close enough to panic, but definitely too close for comfort. I barked at Leo to get out and help, since this whole mess was his fault. But the second I circled to the back of the car, my anger evaporated into pure, gut-chilling fear. Jammed deep into the sidewall of the rear tire was a screwdriver driven in with force. There was absolutely no way that it happened by accident. Someone had really driven that screwdriver in hard. Judging by how deep it went, it took serious strength. Leo started panicking, his voice shaking, but I snapped at him to focus. We scrambled to change the tire, hands trembling, rain pounding down like nails. I tried not to think about who had done it or why they'd chosen us. My hands were shaking uncontrollably by then. Every gust of wind felt like footsteps closing in. The dread in my chest was so heavy it made me nauseous no nightmare could come close. I was tightening the last lug nut when it happened to scream tore through the rain, high-pitched and distant, coming from somewhere behind us. It was unmistakably a woman's scream, high, panicked, and real. That made everything so much worse because Leo had said the person he saw was a man. I tossed the tools into the trunk, abandoned the ruined tire, and jumped into the car. As I started pulling away, Leo grabbed my arm, shouting that we had to go back, that someone was in danger. I refused, though deep down guilt gnawed at me. Maybe I was making a terrible mistake. Leo dialed 911 while I sped through the rain, shouting our rough location into the phone. The whole drive home he glared at me furious, saying I'd abandoned someone who might be dying out there. I couldn't argue, I just kept driving, hands tight on the wheel. Fear had rooted itself too deep. By the time we pulled into my driveway, I'd gone completely silent, pretending not to hear him call me a coward. Instead of dropping Leo off, we just sat there in my driveway, the rain still hammering the windshield, both of us trying to piece it together. Leo insisted the scream belonged to someone being attacked, maybe stalked by the man he'd seen. He was eaten up with guilt for not helping, but I couldn't make sense of it. If someone was out there doing something evil, why puncture a random car's tire? That would only risk exposure, the opposite of what any predator would want. I told Leo it didn't add up. If a woman was really in danger, she would have seen our headlights and called for help right away, not after we'd left. None of it made sense. As I said it out loud, I finally understood what my instincts had been screaming all along, that something about that whole scene wasn't right, that we hadn't escaped by accident, but by luck. I told Leo maybe the scream had been a setup, a trap meant to draw us out, maybe with more than one person involved. It wasn't impossible, but the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. Who would plan something like that in the middle of nowhere on a night like this? The storm alone would have ruined any plan. Yet somehow the thought that it wasn't a trap felt even worse. Leo and I went in circles for hours, neither of us convincing the other. By morning, I called the police to check if they'd found anything. They said the area was clear, no people, no signs of struggle. But what really got me was when they said they couldn't find the tire either. It was just gone. That detail still keeps me up at night. I tried to convince myself maybe the cops had just missed the tire, but Leo's new theory unsettled me even more. He said maybe it was the woman who did it, the same one who screamed trying to lure us out. But why sabotage the car instead of calling for help? None of it made sense. Every version of the story felt wrong in a different way. The thought haunts me sometimes that maybe someone really needed help and I left them to die in that storm. I tell myself we had no choice, but deep down I'm not sure I believe it. Thank you for staying until the end. If the dark didn't scare you away, maybe you belong here. Subscribe to Night Whispers and let the darkness find you again next time.